Join me after the break.
Extended sale alert! Hooray! An extension offer to the ongoing London promotional fairs. You asked, we listened. Save over 600,000 naira on your London trip with Airpeace when you connect from our major domestic destinations to London at no extra cost and enjoy an exclusive extra baggage allowance. Economy class promo fares starts from 1.2 million naira with an extra 23 kg baggage, while business class fares start from 4.5 million naira with an extra 32 kg baggage. Grab these special fares. Sale period extends till March 31st, 2025 and travel period valid till April 15th, 2025. Flying style abroad are Boeing 777s with spacious seating and delightful meals. Book now at flyairpeace.com or download the Airpeace app from the Play Store or App Store. Airpeace, your peace is our goal.
This is Eagle 7 Sports Radio, 103.7 FM, reaching you from Wasimi, Ogun State, in Abeokuta in Ogun State. Well, as you can see, for the first time since I started broadcasting on Eagle 7 Sports Radio, I'm a bit anxious. Why? You know, I'm having as my special guest today the man who led me into radio. As you know, I'm untrained, totally untrained. But Martin Davies, I don't know what he saw so many years ago when he started inviting me to programs, and suddenly he made me part of his crew to several international matches and the championships, particularly AFCON, and we became very good friends. So I have the pleasure to introduce my boss, my mentor, my teacher, my friend, Mr. Martin Davies. His name is synonymous with BBC. Once again, good morning, Martin.
Good morning, Shagan. Absolute joy to be with you. And I hadn't realised that it was 45 years to the day since you won the AFCON. Yeah, was it?
Absolutely. Yeah,
that's fantastic. And you undersold yourself in that. You scored 2 goals, and the nation, I'm sure was so proud of you. I've only ever seen sort of footage of it, but yeah, that must have been an amazing experience.
Absolutely. You see, the man has turned the tables on me now. He's the one doing the interviewing. That's his life. That's his life. That's Martin for you. So Martin, yeah, since you left BBC and moved down under to Australia, what have you been doing?
Well, I moved down here.
Why would anybody leave the UK and go to the other end of the world?
Well, I'm sort of pleased that I'm able to say these things now that I don't work for the BBC, because when you work for the BBC, you have to be very careful about always representing, the Beeb. And no, frankly, when Brexit came along, I was not a fan. I was very uncomfortable about the spirit of Brexit. And so, yeah, we were very fortunate. We had an opportunity to move to Australia. And now I'm heading up a news network down here, working in the news domain rather than sport. But I love sport, I love soccer, and I love Africa. And so I just want to keep in touch with great people like you. And I think back to some of the great times we've had, Shagan, yes. some pepper soups in Lagos. And I was telling somebody about you today, and my favorite, I'll never forget. And I just felt so privileged to be with you when you took me out to a place and we walked in, and there were all the guys sitting there with the upturned beer crates, drinking the Club and the Star. And they had a bottle of red wine for you. And they pulled down this and they said, "Big Shake, here's your red wine." And they dusted it down. And you and I sat there drinking red wine as the sun set, and we talked about everything in that. And I just felt very privileged. So thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Martin. Well, our conversation this morning is about football, really. I know you still try to play some level of football. We tried once and played together somewhere. I don't remember where we played together. And I thought I was better than you then with my 2 knees, with my two knocked knees. at the time until I saw that yours were even worse than mine. But you just told me this morning that you still play. How? How come, man?
I somehow keep going, Shagan. I saw my physio yesterday, and I was so pleased that he said, "Yep, yeah, that's fine. Just carry on playing soccer." I think you might have heard my Cambodian girlfriend taking away the plates in the background here. I'm living a very multicultural life out here, which I love. I really do.
It's paradise for you. Tell us about football in Australia. That's something we don't follow so much in Nigeria. In fact, around the world, I don't think Australian football is that followed. But how is it in Australia? Do we have African players there? Are there opportunities for African players to come? Is it professional? And maybe you can comment also on the topic of my editorial, the grass, the quality of pitches that people play on. So all of that.
Yeah, no, sure. So if we start with, they've got the A-League, as they call it. And interestingly enough, I actually live about 1 hour north of Sydney in a place called Gosford. And it's literally the stadium when the Central Coast Mariners are playing at home. You can hear the crowd if they score. And that was certainly the case last year because they won the league. They won the A-League, and it was great. The whole sort of community got behind them. And then they went into the Asian Cup. So they're playing in that this season, in the Asian Championship, rather. And I think there's a number of shames, if I might say, about Australian soccer. Number one is that there's no relegation. So it's a bit like, because you don't have any relegation, there's nothing to fear about being bad. So consequently, a team like the Central Coast Mariners, who won the league last year, they're languishing in about 12th position this year. Interestingly, this year, the league leaders at the moment don't even come from Australia. That's a bit weird, isn't it? And
How come?
They come from New Zealand. And so Auckland play in the league, rather like in, I'm not sure, is it the ice hockey? I think the whole, you have Canadian teams playing in America and stuff like that. But I think that the failure of it really just shows, like, if you've got promotion and relegation, it just keeps interest alive so much more. But it's interesting because the Central Coast Mariners, having won the league, you think, great, build on it. Make yourselves a team that, if you think about the way that it took Manchester City so long to win the Premier League, but once they'd done it, they built on it and off you go. And as an indication of the standard, Central Coast Mariners sold some of their players and they went and played in the lower leagues in Scotland. It's not exactly the biggest step up, is it? You also asked about African players, and interestingly, there's a lot of Sudanese people have made their way to Australia. And so what happened was, because of the civil war in Sudan, they went as refugees to Kenya, and then they found their way to Australia, many of them to Melbourne. And quite a few of the players who are of Sudanese origin have made their way into professional soccer here in Australia. So tends to be Sudanese players that you'll find, players of Sudanese origin who are turning out and they're playing now. They're naturalised as Australians and are playing for Australia.
Well, that's strange that there's no relegation, there's no promotion. Why would you have such a situation at all? And just listening to you, it's so simple. What would happen should there be promotion and relegation? It would change the whole
completely.
Whatever it is of Australian football. And when you say professional, are the players well paid?
No.
Are there incentives to attract players to Australia?
Again, it's peculiar because the other thing about Australia is that it really is a land of immigration. So allegedly, I think there's about probably, I think it's really high now. The figure's like 40 or 50% of us who are Australian, or I'm in the process of applying for citizenship, but 40 or 50% of people have both parents born overseas. And as a consequence, you've got just a nation of immigrants. And therefore, you've got people who love soccer. So many of my friends are Brazilian. Well, guess what we talk about? and I've come across some Nigerians, and guess what we talk about?
Yeah.
You know, and the thing is, because we all love soccer, and yet that traditionally there's a lot of money that is sunk into sports like rugby league, that is sunk into AFL, the Australian rules football. And but if you look at where the geographical sort of footprint is of those two major sports, it's not nationwide. And with this growing kind of immigrant community, of which I see myself very much as part of, because I've only been here for 5 years, I think, and there are a lot of English people here, you know, who love soccer. I think the country is not making as much of an opportunity as it might of soccer. In the midst of that, the Matildas, the women's national team, they're adored. And they get huge crowds. Why? Because they had the World Cup last year, and you had Australia and New Zealand hosting the World Cup, and it gave it an immense profile. So I think that helped enormously with the profile of women's football in this country. But the grassroots soccer here is really strong. I play soccer for a club where we've got like 1,000 players, and it's
wow.
Yeah, so we have, you know, here am I, you know, I've passed 60 now and I'm still playing, and then there are young kids as young as 7, and you've got all these age ranges all the way up, men, women's. It's great. So that's vibrant, but it's not translating into really a vibrant professional league. No.
Well, we are in the season of World Cup qualifiers. And every year we read how Australia struggles. And it's not just Australia, New Zealand, how they struggle to qualify for the World Cup. Why do they do that? Why do they struggle, since football is not really a prime sport in Australia? And how are they doing, you know, towards the World Cup? Are they going to qualify? Are they like us, Nigeria, struggling to qualify?
Yeah, so, I mean, in the past, I think you should have some sympathy, because it's not dissimilar to the story that I mean, I think many people, when I was certainly working in the heart of African football at the BBC, there was always a kind of campaign for there to be more places. And I remember the time that the African number of places moved from up to 3, and then I remember when it increased again to 5. And this time it's increasing again, I think, to 9, isn't it? There's going to be 9 African nations going to the World Cup. So the fact that the World Cup final has got 48 teams rather than 32, you know, that enables there to be more places. Poor old Australia. I was talking to a friend yesterday, and he was telling me, he said, yeah, we always used to have this half place. We never had a full place. So they would end up needing to play against either the runners-up in Asia or the bottom place team in South America. So repeatedly they would play against Uruguay, home and away, or Iran, home and away. And so for 20 years, the nation failed to qualify, and then qualified again for the German World Cup in 2006, when they had that amazing generation of Tim Cahill, who played for the club I love, Everton, and Mark Schwarzer, Bresciano, who played in Italy, and they did really well. Harry Kewell, that generation. Yeah. So that's really the story of why they haven't qualified. What about this time? Well, in Asia, they're playing very much in Asia now. They won the Asian Cup, I think it was 2016, and that was a big moment. Interestingly, the under-20s won the Asian Cup recently as well, and I think that's the one to look out for. And in fact, in the midst of that team, there's a bit of a connection to Nigeria. I remember going to see Daniel Amokachi in Bruges when he was just getting going in his career, and he played alongside a really nice player called Paul Oken, who was Australian. And Paul Oken's son is now in that under-20 side that has just won the World Cup. The Asian Cup at that level. But as for this World Cup, they're doing all right. They're in second place. They're behind Japan. And I'm sure people may have heard that Japan has become the first team to qualify for the USA and Mexico and Canada. First team outside of the host nations. Yeah. So they won yesterday 2-0. And Yeah, Australia, they beat Indonesia 5-1 in their most recent game. They're playing China on Tuesday, and then they've got Japan at home. And with the Japanese having already qualified, you kind of fancy Australia a little bit to maybe get that second spot, which would give them a qualification place.
Well, send our greetings to them. We wish them the best of luck. We hope they will be able to join Nigeria, as we prepare for 2026. Have you been following? I know. Well, what a question. I know you would have. The African qualifiers for the World Cup. You are almost African yourself.
That's very sweet of you, Segun. I have been, to an extent. I've just today been looking at some of the highlights, and it's funny because clearly Nigeria have got it all to do, haven't they? They've got a mountain to climb still. It was great to see Ghana putting in a 5-0 victory over Chad. And of course, Egypt are doing well. Algeria were away at Botswana and won 3-1. So some of the old success stories, if you like. But I must say, one of the things I felt disappointed about, I know that Morocco are hosting a number of games for countries that have had problems, like Ethiopia, etc. So the Ethiopian game against Egypt was held in Morocco. But just disappointed by the sort of, the huge empty terraces and the lack of fans turning up for games. And I think, seriously, there's something to be done about marketing. I mean, Ivory Coast playing in Morocco, like, I personally would get on a plane and fly across Australia. If Ivory Coast came to Perth, which is a 6-hour flight from here, I'd get on a plane and go and watch them, because I just, having seen them win the AFCON, I've just followed it on the TV from here. I'd just love to see the Ivory Coast in action, the African champions. And yet in Morocco, it was just a handful of people, it seemed to be in the stadium. And I think that's a real shame, and that's a real challenge for the marketing of the game still in Africa.
Well, but even beyond marketing, moving around Africa isn't the easiest thing in the world. Flying from country to country, even neighboring countries, you might have to go to Europe first and then fly back to Africa and the like. So, but having said that, this World Cup 2026 has a totally different coloration from every other World Cup that we know about. It's going to take place in a whole continent, a whole North American continent, Canada, USA, and Mexico. These three countries are embroiled in political issues, harakiri, and 48 countries are going to participate. There'll be 3 automatic qualifiers already, and we're not discussing politics, but we have a Donald Trump that, everybody is not sure what will happen, what he says, what he does. You sent me a newspaper, a report the other day of this French national who wrote certain things or sent certain messages on his phone. His phone was checked at the airport, and they found that he was criticizing Donald Trump, and they sent him back. This World Cup, what are your initial thoughts about it generally?
It's extraordinary. Like you say, it's extraordinary times. And the fact that you've got a president of the USA who is just not behaving like he's the ally. So many people feel that the Americans, if you go back to the Second World War and then becoming the reliable ally, and then the whole nature of history that really was kickstarted from the end of the Second World War until Trump came along. And it's quite extraordinary. And what strikes me is that, I mean, I hold an editorial meeting across Australia on a Friday. So yesterday we were just looking at some of the things that are happening, Segun. And if you look that in Sweden, there's a Swedish Facebook group that is advocating the boycotting of American products that's now got nearly 100,000 members. You've got in Denmark, they are actually putting black stars onto, like the black stars of Ghana, onto products that are Danish, in order to help people to choose Danish and not American. The Danes are livid with Trump and America because of this. He keeps going on about how he wants to take Greenland, and you've got all of this happening. And then if you look at closer to home in terms of the American perspective, that you've got in Canada an immense boycott because of the tariffs. So Canadians just all saying, I've been watching some YouTubes from Canada of people saying, we never go to the US now. Them clearing the bourbon, the whiskey, I don't know if you ever drink American bourbon after you've had a red wine, Shagan, but I don't. They're clearing it off the shelves. They're clearing it off the shelves. They won't touch American bourbon. They're saying drink Canadian. Don't go to the US. And they're supposed to be in 15 months' time hosting a World Cup together, right? I mean, the mind boggles. And that's just, it's from that facet. And if you take Australia, for example, so in my sector, I work with a lot of really small volunteer-based stations that in many cases that really just want to be telling local news, and the fate of local news and the importance of telling our own stories from community. The government here came up because they realized that basically increasingly people are getting their news through things like Facebook and Google. So the Australian government in December of last year came up with a news bargaining arrangement whereby they would approach the big players like Google, like Facebook, and would say to them, you pay for the news, or if you don't pay, you pay this levy. Either way, it's only fair. The amount of revenue, the advertising revenue, etc., you get is immense. So they came up with that in December. I think they thought, and I think most people would feel that it was, certainly in the media, thought it was a fair arrangement, because suddenly it was Google and Facebook that was taking a lot of the advertising revenue rather than the media, the local media. And I'm sure it must be similar in Nigeria. Absolutely. So they came up with this in December, and then apparently, the likes of Musk and others in America have dug around. They found this, and they're accusing it of being. You could argue there is a case. You could argue that it's a tariff against them, and so they now want to come down and punitively punish Australia for suggesting it. And it to me and to many people, I think, in the media here, it smacks of bullying. And it's and it's difficult. And I think that the fact that the world has changed so much with Trump's second coming is extraordinary. And it's just, the mind boggles about how that World Cup might be played out.
And to imagine that we're having this conversation now and expressing our views the way we are, and we're on global media, so probably we are signing our way away from the World Cup. We might not be allowed into the USA.
Well, I must admit, I was thinking, and again, if you think of some of the things that are going on, some of the changes that are taking place, I mean, it's extraordinary. I mean, another story that I came across yesterday, and this was on the BBC's website, is that 70,000 people with English or Afrikaans names in South Africans, so white South Africans, have applied for political asylum to the USA.
Really?
And so imagine if that were to happen, and suddenly this 70,000 Afrikaners and, of English origin people go over to the USA. What does that say, right, in terms of immigration policy, when at the same time they're doing everything they can to stop Mexicans and other people? And you could imagine, Nelson Mandela turning in his grave. Yeah? Because it was about, we live peacefully together. Creed and color doesn't matter. It's about, living in harmony. And so it's just extraordinary what's going on. And then another facet is that there's an organization that I've been reading about in the US, the US Travel Association, saying that they're seriously worried with all the cuts that the Doge group that has been made, Elon Musk and this trying to make it more effective in government, that there just won't be enough people in the right jobs to be issuing visas. So when you think of our friend Dr. Oladipo and the Nigerian Supporters Club, hopefully applying for visas, it might be a minefield. And of course, Trump has come up as well with this hit list for Africa. I haven't inspected it to see whether Nigeria is on his list of, but it's highly offensive as well for a lot of countries to be. Why should they be on a list? I've got friends from Sierra Leone, for example, life will become much, much harder for them to visit America. So it's really interesting to see this sea change, and I find it interesting to talk about, because I think that I try to, as a journalist, as much as possible look for balance, and you look for where there's, but I don't see that there's a good balance in this. I just see it as being an onslaught to challenge values that I stand for and which the world has stood for. And if you believe in internationalism and you believe in racial harmony and all of those things, then how it doesn't sit comfortably.
Wow. Well, believe it or not, for you, the listener everywhere around the world, this is Eagle 7 Sports Radio. This is a sports radio station, and we are reaching you from Wasimi in Ogun State. We'll be going on a short break. When we come back, I would want Martin to take us into the world of new media. Here is a man that grew in BBC, when BBC was the voice of the world, and he was on radio. Now, where's the place of radio in this new world of the media? Where's the world of the radio? Newspapers have died mostly. Television is now on your telephones, and if you want to even listen to radio, you have to go on your phone. Everything, you need to go on your phone to do everything. How do you see this new world? Join us after the break.
Exciting news from Airpeace. We're taking your London trip to the next level. More pleasurable, convenient, and affordable than ever. From January 20th to February 20th, 2025, you have an opportunity to grab amazing promo deals during our exclusive sale period as you travel in style from January 20th to March 31st, 2025. Economy fares starting at just 1.2 million naira and business class luxury at 4.5 million naira on our Lagos to London routes. Step into elegance aboard our luxurious Boeing 777s and enjoy spacious comfort, gourmet meals, and premium service, all designed to make your journey unforgettable. What are you waiting for? Book now at flyairpeace.com or download the Airpeace app from the Play Store or App Store. Airpeace, your peace is our goal.
Mr. Martin Davis, you listened to my editorial, and I spoke about the grass field being king. I didn't have I didn't remember to ask you your thoughts on that. Synthetic pitches, grass pitches, and so on and so forth. What are your thoughts?
I'm a big fan of the grass pitch for all sorts of reasons. But there's a couple of points I want to throw in that which sort of add to the weight of why I think grass pitches are particularly good. I'm a little bit keen on finding out more. I've been doing a lot of research on the ACL injury, and it used to be that the ACL injury, which is the tendon, I think it's a tendon, or that runs through the middle of everybody's knee, and the number of ACL injuries has increased. And part of the research that I've come across, the reason I'm interested is because I have two sons, the second of whom is a really good player, and he's currently recovering from an ACL operation. And Rodri, the Ballon d'Or winner, Recently, I saw on social media that he was making a return to the pitch, and I sent that to my son. He said, "Yep, my physio says I can go back to the pitch as well." And basically, we keep hearing about it, but in my research, I discovered that you're more likely to get an ACL on a full synthetic turf than you are on any other form of pitch. So that's another reason. So I think it's the jarring action that can happen, you know. So that's one reason, Shagan, that I'm not a big fan of synthetic pitches. But there's also another one. There's an environmental one, which is that there's research that shows about some of these plastics that can never, ever be destroyed. These pitches are basically created from these. And particularly if it's near a waterway, particularly if it's near the sea, and here in Australia, you know, we're a nation that just lives on the seaboard. There's not much goes on in the middle of the country, and so all the big cities and the population tend to be close to the coast. And every time there's a football game on a synthetic pitch, a little bit of that pitch will get scuffed up by the players' boots. It will travel off the pitch. It will find its way into a waterway. It'll find its way into the sea. It finds its way into the mouths and then the stomachs of fish that we end up eating. And then that will then get into our bodies. And, you know, it's a cyclical kind of thing. And so that's another reason that I'm not a big fan of them. Here in Australia, people have struggles with trying to grow grass sometimes, and they'll put synthetic turf in as they got in their gardens. So you'll find people. I've got a friend gave me their lawnmower. They said, "I've just put synthetic gardening. Have my lawnmower." Wow. And so, you know, it's so those are two other reasons that I think. So I'm a bit of a fan of the traditional grass pitch as well. And there is something I feel about, playing on a surface like that. And the other thing is, you know, if you think about when you were playing back in the 80s and stuff, I mean, the pitches then, the like watching games from then, everything was a bit bobbly, and whereas now all over the pitches are just amazing, because the level of groundsmanship has gone up. I remember in Ghana 2008, the Ghanaian organisers had basically gone and they'd gone and looked for great groundsmen around the world of Ghanaian origin, and they found one who was working for Fulham Football Club in England in the English Premier League. And so they basically sorry, just having to put my girlfriend into her evening wear. I've never had to do that before. Zip up a lady's dress whilst being live on the radio. Oh dear, it's all happening today, Shagan. Where was I? Yeah, so they found this great groundsman. They found this great groundsman. I think he was called Frank, if I remember. And he was brilliant. And he came down from Fulham, and he gave Ghana the best pitches for that 2008 Africa Cup of Nations.
Absolutely. That's the problem we have. Unfortunately, our administrators still don't appreciate. They say that, we're trying to fix the pitches, but no effort is being done to do the necessary research, to look for experienced groundsmen who may be Nigerians abroad and so on and so forth, and bring them to fix our grounds. We had some of the best football grounds in the world many, many decades ago. Even in the 60s and 70s, we had Liberty Stadium when the Israeli engineers that were hired to come and do the excavation of the Liberty Stadium got there and saw the pitch. They were wondering why we needed to excavate, because they did not have that quality of grass pitch. Even in Israel and in several parts of Europe, we excavated, and since then, 30 years ago, no match has been able to be played on that pitch. And we have done that to so many pitches around Nigeria. And it is just about not knowing enough, not appreciating enough, not doing enough research into why grass pitches are so important. Now we are facing it. There's only one ground in Nigeria that can host FIFA matches, just one ground. And it is far away, south, in the southernmost part of the country, in Uyo, laid back, just an imagined metropolis, and you don't have the kind of energy and frenzy that you find in Lagos that would lift the spirit of players, and make them win every match. If you remember, Lagos used to be the abattoir of visiting teams. You come there and you get whooped. Now we take you to Uyo, and it's a neutral ground. Teams just come there and it is neutral and all that. So, but thank you very much for that insight.
There was a song, if you remember it, called "Video Killed the Radio Stars," and it's almost like the headline could be "Synthetic Pitch Killed the Super Eagles."
Absolutely.
Because if your premise is true, and no, absolutely, Surulere, the area boys, you go there. I remember the 2002 AFCON final with Nigeria and Cameroon, and the place was rocking. And why would you forfeit that? That's a shame. So is Surulere now the old national stadium? Is that is that synthetic?
It's dead. It's dead like a dodo. It's dead. Nothing is happening.
That is a shame. That is a shame.
And your thoughts on new media? What has happened to radio, television, script, and all that? And this, this world of digital, technology, and everything that comes down to your phone and all that. What are your thoughts?
I think it's about kind of marketing. Again, it's all to do with marketing. So isn't it extraordinary that I remember the first time I met you was 1994. So, here we are 31 years later. And at the time, we were in Tunisia at the AFCON. It was a late one. Yeah. It wasn't a January one. It was an April one. And at the time, at the BBC, we used to have a system whereby to broadcast, you would have a little thing called a mutter box. And you would unscrew a telephone, and you'd have crocodile clips you applied to the telephone internally. And then I remember sitting with you in one of the grounds in Tunis with our headphones on, and we're connected into this thing, and then into this box that's connected through a telephone. Yeah. And that's how we used to broadcast. Here we are, 31 years later. We've had some great times over the years together. And we're sitting. You're at home in Nigeria. I'm sitting at home, and I'm also. Can I just say I'm so pleased that your radio station, because you've always talked about your dream, and it's lovely to be with somebody who's fulfilled. He's kept to his plan and fulfilled his dream. So congratulations, Segun. It's no mean feat. I'm proud of you. Well done. But just to say, I think that. It's in terms of all that, radio still has a place because it's all about audio communication. And if you look at the statistics, people love podcasts, right? What do they love about podcasts? They love the fact that it's intimate, it's personal, and it's getting somewhere. And so I think if you start to look at, don't think of radio being about an FM. Sorry, I know you. By the way, I think your branding's great. Of your frequency, but it's not all about frequencies anymore. It's about picking stuff up, as you said, on the phone. I mean, I don't own a radio, but I work in radio, and I listen every day. A lot of my work is listening to radio stations via my phone, via different apps. And the skills of audio are still there. The amazing ability that we now have, as I say, to have this conversation, to be able to collect audio from anywhere, to edit it quickly. I've had great fun putting together a radio product with reporters around Australia, and we can do it in minutes. We just know we've got a modus operandi. We'll drop the audio into a certain place, we edit it, we put it on air, and on air just means it's putting it together, and then it goes out via different digital platforms, and it's close to kind of live podcasting, if you like. So I think audio still has a place, and it's always going to be. The thing about radio is that it's because people's imagination goes further. You can always be the theatre of the mind. Radio can be the theatre of the mind, and you can. Again, I remember being with you in Tunisia a full 10 years later, 2004, at the AFCON when Morocco beat Tunisia 2-1. No, Tunisia beat Morocco 2-1. I got it wrong. It was the Tunisians who won, of course, as the host nation. And that was a great final. And just the fact that, we were telling the whole of Africa, we were sharing with Africa via the BBC's rebroadcasting partners, via FM, etc. We were the eyes and ears. And so it's a kind of an honor to be able to describe and to draw people in to these amazing events. So I think radio is always going to... The problem with television, I've worked in television, and you need pictures, and you can't always have live streaming of pictures. Yeah, video takes a little bit longer to put together than audio. So I think if it's done well, if it's sold well, and if you cross promote and work with other platforms like social media, like some of the connective kind of messaging areas like WhatsApp that you can collect audio from that. I think that's great. And if you can use it in that way, then there's always going to be a space for audio communication in my book.
Which are the great teams, national teams in the world now, as we prepare for 2026? Which are the teams that are impressing you around the world now? I tried to think it yesterday. I was just looking at it. And not Brazil, not even Argentina. That's an aging team. The Germans struggled against Italy a couple of days ago, and I couldn't even recognize them properly. The Spanish, I don't know. Which are the teams that really strike you as doing well and could be up there in 2026?
It's a good question. I mean, I don't know how far they could go, but I must say I was watching some highlights of Japan, the first team to qualify for the World Cup, right? In this time. And they've got some great players, and anyone following the Premier League, so they beat Bahrain 2-0 to qualify, and the first goal was scored by Kamada, who plays for Crystal Palace. They've got Brighton's brilliant Mitoma. I just love watching that guy play. And then Takefusa Kubo, who's just unbelievably talented and fast and strong, who plays for Real Sociedad in Spain. And so, I mean, I thought, wow, I'm going to be excited watching them in the World Cup. And again, it's funny how Asian football has grown in strength. The Qataris have won the last 2 Asian Cups. I mean, that's something to watch. Are they going to be able to grow? I'm not suggesting that they're going to be I'm not taking them up to be a sort of super level team, but that's interesting. Interesting what's happening to my country of birth, England, with Thomas Tuchel coming in as the coach there. And they beat Albania yesterday, and he seems to have had a fairly radical approach, very different to Gareth Southgate. It's like he had that wealth of stars, and it was almost like he'd had a chat with a bunch of kind of teenage football fans who were had their Panini stickers, and they said, "Here, Gareth, these are the 24 best players in England on Panini." And he go, "Yeah, that'll do." And whereas now it feels like Tuchel's trying to do something with a bit different. He's like trying to look at the character. All the players talk about how he FaceTimes them when he meets them first of all, and he brings in players that might not be the obvious superstars. And so and I think there's something in that. In when you look at teams, there's always, you need a mixture, don't you? You need famously, Eric Cantona said of Didier Deschamps when they were playing together in the national team that Cantona saw himself as the great artist, and Deschamps was just like the guy he was the hod carrier, carried the bricks. And I don't think Deschamps ever forgave him. And Cantona didn't have the best international career. But you do need that mix of players. And Deschamps, now the coach of France, of course, I think is pretty conscious of that when he picks selects his teams. But who to really watch? I mean, I don't know. It's going to be, as you say, Argentina. Are they all getting older? We all know Lionel Messi's getting older, but how he single-handedly, not quite, but did a hell of a job, didn't he, at the last World Cup? So whether I don't know what happens about replacing somebody who is such a superstar. That is difficult. But yeah, I think Germany are an interesting one to watch when you think about how they sort of went through their collapse and then they came back and in the World Cup in Brazil. It's quite extraordinary in the semi-final against Brazil. Wow, that was something else. And Spain in the Euros, I thought were really strong. And I think they could be good again. Who knows?
But one big surprise for me every World Cup is that when you're looking at the home of football, which is England, and like the center of the universe when it comes to football, also, the top players are there, and the best league in the world, arguably. And the English media would always say, well, England has a chance. What is it about England that they have been unable to win this World Cup since 1966? What is it? Despite all their experiences, their professionalism, great coaches, very good players, great academies, and everybody's going to England. But something, maybe the rest of us can learn from the failures of England. What is it about England?
Can't believe I'm saying I've used it now in 3 different answers, but marketing. Because I think that with the thing about the marketing of the England team, a lot of what you just said in your question, it's almost like they've over-marketed, they've oversold England. I think the English media gets excited and oversells it because everybody's so fascinated by the English Premier League because of it being such a global and exciting league, because they've done a brilliant job of selling it. And I mean, I'm an Everton fan, and we've got a new stadium, and it's going to be like 52,000 seats. When I go back to England in September, I won't be able to go and watch them because all the seats will be sold. And it's and it's the marketing. And so in the same way that I was saying earlier, it's such a shame that the African football couldn't be marketed better. I mean, I don't get it. And in turn, I think English football is possibly over-marketed. So I think the hype goes with it. I think all the sort of superstardom stuff goes with it. There might be a point when perhaps, I know there's also a belief that I was reading about how so many teams now have got players that have naturalized. And if you think back, I was mentioning that Tunisian AFCON in 2004 when they had a couple of Brazilians who naturalized as Tunisians. And I was watching the Indonesian side against Australia the other day, and it's packed full of players who are of Dutch and English origin who've naturalized as Indonesian. And so that's one. And I've followed this sort of article about how that one argument is that can aid the local football to kind of come up. And I think possibly the volume and the variety of top players that have played in England who are not English inevitably will have raised the standard, of some of the young English players. And I think they consequently would be more confident. But yet still something happens when they come together and they go to a tournament, and the whole kind of English mentality of go St. George and all of that nonsense, that they're going to win the World Cup, that the red top media gets carried away and off we go, and it's almost like they're doomed to fail. So it's almost like over marketed. So can't believe I'm not a marketer, Shagan. I don't know where this is all coming from. So 3 answers I've given you where I've said it's all about marketing.
Oh, Martin. Lionel Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo. Who's the better player?
Oh, for me, there's not a choice. It's Messi. I think Messi, personally, I might be controversial. I think he's literally better than he's the all-time. I mean, I've all the footage that I watch of Maradona. His control was not as good as Messi's. His ability to just take on an entire defense and mesmerize them, tie them up in knots. His awareness of where everything is on the pitch is just startling. Pele came much earlier, but Pele was, I don't think even Pele didn't have that sort of like balletic grace that Messi has got. I just think Messi is like an all-time, and you look at his stats, and it was done all at the highest level. And then just to put the cherry on the top, as they say in South Africa, it's it was winning the World Cup.
Absolutely. Best player in the world now, as we go into 2026. Your best player in the world.
There are. I'll be honest. It's one of the things. It gives me optimism. I genuinely think the standard of football has gone up and keeps going up. People say, "Oh yeah, people would play on the streets and stuff." But when as a kid, if you're playing on the streets, you're not being coached and you're not being trained to just trap that ball, take it out of the air, and spin and go. In the way that young players are now. Yeah. And I think just that there's a whole theory, there's a book on you need to practice for 10,000 hours to really be a master of something, written by a guy who was in the British table tennis team. And I think that 10,000 hours, that's a reality now almost with young players. They just get it. And as I mentioned earlier about the ACL, I said to my son, I'm really proud of you because your comeback has been parallel to Rodri, who's the Ballon d'Or winner. But Rodri is just paid to get better. He's paid to do physio. And somehow my son has squeezed it in about going to work. Every time I phone him, I'm just going in the gym, Dad, or I'm just coming out the gym, or I'm at the gym, And so he's worked like a Trojan. And I really hope it holds up and he can take up football again. But the point is, it's like the professional game now. There's so many good young players, and they start younger. It's like what's he called, the young Spanish guy. I mean, I saw a thing recently about what he's achieved at age 17 compared to Ronaldo. Yamal, exactly, Yamal compared to Messi and Ronaldo, and it's astonishing that what he's achieved at this age. So they just bring them on younger. It's like Wayne Rooney was playing for England when he was 16. Nobody trusted a 16-year-old several years ago, 20-odd years ago. It's like, it's fascinating to see that. So I think there are lots of exciting players. In England, everyone's excited about Bellingham still. I think he's a real amazing. He reminds me in a way, he's a bit like more of a Pele sort of player. He's just got power, and is as well as
Pele, Cruyff, that kind of player.
Yeah. Cruyff was a great player as well. I don't think he was, but having said that, I don't think again, he had the skill of somebody like Messi. But I mean.
But so who's your choice? Best player in the world.
Best player in the world right now. Whew. I mean, don't know. I think Yamal has got the potential to be that as Messi goes out, and also
not
it's
Mbappe,
the same.
Not Mbappe.
No, and you and I are both tennis fans, right? And for some reason, there is something. So I'm naturally right-handed, and I'm naturally just about right-footed. I pride myself on being two-footed, but there is something about that I find is cuter on the eye, a left-handed tennis player and a left-footed footballer.
Absolutely.
And I cannot say why. So I think somebody like Yamal, who is a lefty, there's something that to my eye attracts me more towards that. This is more of a subtlety, more of a softness of touch with the ball, both in tennis and in football. From the left side. So Mbappe I think is great. One thing about Mbappe, I'm spent much of my life trying to get to the point where I'm fluent in French, and I watch Mbappe and I'm so amazed by his English and his Spanish, which is brilliant. But I'm also amazed by his French. He's a bright bloke. And you watch him in interviews and you're like, sure, this guy could, I'd put him down to be a politician. I could put him down to, I think he's, I want to watch him in the,
France.
Macron, watch out. I would say that boy, he is smart. He impresses me, and he's just, So Mbappe to be possibly the highest flying politician in the future, but I'd say Yamal to be the footballer, and Bellingham. I'd love to see a young English player do really well.
Best club in the world outside Everton. Best club in the world.
Best club in the world. I mean, it's funny because I think it has to be Real Madrid, doesn't it? Because of I mean, it's a bit of a boring answer. But some of the things that I read about and have heard about over the years about the way it's run, it doesn't really fit comfortably with me. But it's about the results, and they always keep doing well. And I'm not really a fan of the Galactico kind of approach. It's sort of my sentiment is much more comfortable with a team that kind of builds a group of young players that all come together. I like those sort of stories. I'm not a fan of buying success, but having said that, Real Madrid seem to be very good at knitting it together on the pitch and just doing some incredible things. And Segun, I'm very aware that the time's slipping towards the end of your show.
Yes, we're almost done.
You're almost done, and yep. And I'm being called to.
Oh, okay.
To leave you. I don't want to leave you in the lurch. But it's been an absolute joy. It's been a joy to be reconnected with you on air.
Thank you, Martin. Well, it's been wonderful speaking with you too. And I wish you well. Say hello to the family for us. And we hope to see you one of these days very soon in Nigeria.
Thank you, Segun. And wishing you all the best, and delighted that everything's going well at Eagle 7. And I hope you continue to soar.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Go well. Bye-bye now.
Okay, that's it. Our interview for today with Martin Davis, my brother and my friend from down under. That's all we're going to present to you today on 90 Minutes with Mathematical. I hope you've enjoyed the conversation. If you did, join us again next week, Saturday, when we're going to bring you another fascinating conversation. But meanwhile, let me say congratulations, Nigeria. Congratulations, the Super Eagles. We wish you well as we go into this new week when we play against Zimbabwe. I know we're going to trash them in Uyo. And then our road to the World Cup in 2026 will truly be clearer. That's all from us here at Eagle 7 Sports Radio. Bye for now.
Exciting news from Airpeace. We're taking your London trip to the next level. More pleasurable, convenient, and affordable than ever. From January 20th to February 20th, 2025, you have an opportunity to grab amazing promo deals during our exclusive sale period as you travel in style from January 20th to March 31st, 2025. Economy fares starting at just 1.2 million naira and business class luxury at 4.5 million naira on our Lagos to London routes. Step into elegance aboard our luxurious Boeing 777s and enjoy spacious comfort, gourmet meals, and premium service, all designed to make your journey unforgettable. What are you waiting for? Book now at flyairpeace.com or download the Airpeace app from the Play Store or App Store. Airpeace, your peace is our goal.